Very warm welcome to the viewers of the Ambedkar Caravan on this very auspicious day of 65th anniversary celebration of the Dhammadiksha that took place exactly like 65 years on this very day in Nagpur. And we are sort of celebrating it with the talks by the erudite people from all over the places. And today we have a very special friend who is a friend of the Buddhist in India, and he has given a series of talk on Ambedkar Caravan, 4 lectures on Ambedkar Caravan, very effective ones. So today we have Professor Kenneth Tanaka, who needs no introduction as far as he's concerned in the Ambedkar in the Buddhist world. He's a scholar. He's a practitioner of Shin Buddhism, but he's not just limited to that. His area of research expands to all forms, all content of Buddhism. And in a way, he is somebody who, besides academic interventions, he is a profound Buddhist leader. And even today, he runs classes for his students all over the places. And today we are lucky to have a professor on this very auspicious day. So I would just like to welcome briefly, sir. Professor, welcome today, and very, very warm welcome. He is always trying to look at, analyze the contemporary issues, whether it's revival of Buddhism in America or in the West. And last few days, he has been thinking about these hate crimes against the Asian Americans in America. But we know that these hate crimes is not just taking place in America, but all over the places. Like in India, there are hate crimes, against the ex-untouchables and other women and minorities and people having various sexual orientations and so on and so forth. So professor has really chosen this area to explore from the Buddhist perspective. And on this very day when this revolution took place based on Buddhism in India, I think this is a very pertinent topic which we need to think about, cogitate over, understand it, and apply it in our various situations from that Buddhist perspective, that perspective of vision and compassion. So I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'm so happy to see Professor. He's a beloved friend, brother, guide, philosopher, and he has agreed to talk to us today on a very short notice. So I in the beginning, I doubt it, only I express my gratitude to him, sir. So Professor, welcome, and the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mangesh, and all my friends in India. It's an honor and privilege to participate on this auspicious occasion. And so allow me to share my
PPT.
Okay. The topic of my talk is hate crimes against Asian Americans in the United States, Buddhist response. Well, Dr. Ambedkar, he advocated a religion, or not a religion of equality and non-discrimination, or just equality and non-discrimination. And one of the quotes that I got is he once indicated, "I like the religion that teaches liberty, equality, and fraternity." And this speaks to the essence of my talk today about hate crimes against Asian Americans in the US. So just to give you a background and a context of my talk, a few months ago, I was interviewed by a Buddhist magazine called Tricycle, the Buddhist Review, which is located in New York. And in that interview, they asked me about how I felt about anti-Asian, Asian American crimes that is taking place more than before. And so they asked me, because I'm Asian American. And although I am presently living in Japan because I got a job in Tokyo teaching Buddhism at a university in Tokyo. And even though I've retired, I'm still residing in Japan. And in the sometime in the future, I probably will go back to California. So what happens in America is very important to me. Um, and when they asked me about, hate crimes, I responded to them to an audience which is comprised mostly of non-Asian Americans, mostly of white Americans who are Buddhists. And however, today, as I talk, I know that the audience is primarily Buddhists living in India and those who are affiliated with the Dr. Ambedkar Buddhist movement. So as Mangesh said, he didn't give me a plenty of time. Just very few days ago, he asked me, "Hey, would you like to give a talk?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what," but he mentioned that it was on the occasion of Dr. Ambedkar converting to Buddhism, and it was today or yesterday today. So I felt, well, I'll do my best to give a talk, even though I cannot get ready, prepare well. So my talk today is more based on my experience and not on any kind of preparation that I did academically. So with that, I'd like to. So hate crimes against Asian Americans clearly became increased in the year 2020 and into the year 2021. For example, in San Francisco, an elderly Asian man was taking a walk, and he was attacked, and later he passed away, unfortunately. And then in a much noted shooting that took place in March 16th of this year in Georgia, state of Georgia. 8 people were killed by a shooter, and 6 of them were Asian American women. In this case, they were not all of Chinese background. In fact, the elderly man was of Thai background, and most of the 6 killed in the massage parlor were of Korean descent. So that goes to show that for many people, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you look Asian, you become target. Now, I have all 3 of my adult children live in the US. And of course, last year I was concerned when this spike in hate crimes began. So I asked them about their appraisal, their understanding of the situation. And they said that, definitely they are concerned, but they said there's really no drastic change for the worse. However, one of my sons, he has a family and children, and they went to a restaurant. And as they went into the restaurant and sat next to another family, they noticed that all of a sudden, the other family who were not Asian, they took out their mask and put the mask on, which, in itself is a kind of a very concerning situation, that just because you are Asian American, that somehow they saw that you could infect you or should be of concern. So that is a kind of a one example of how things have changed under COVID pandemic. Now, having said that, just let me say that my own experience. I lived in the U.S., especially California. So California is more progressive, not like middle of the country, starting 1958. And so, in my experience, I've never had schoolmates, classmates, make any comments in a mean-spirited way because I was Asian American, except for one incident. So, in all of my up to high school, uh, I didn't experience much actions that could be deemed, offensive, except for one incident when we were out there on the school grounds for a physical education class, and we were doing exercise, and the person, my classmate, who was a football player, was in front. He was, leading the way, and all of a sudden he made a comment like, called me rice bowl. And that was surprise. I didn't know, I didn't incite anything. He, for one reason or another, he may have had a bad day, but I never made any incident out of it or complaint to my teacher or others. So, and then of course on occasion, strangers will make comments or say a few things, but that is very rare. And on the one, just to give you an example so that you understand the nature of it, I was at Disneyland in Los Angeles, and group of people who were white, including children, and they came by and they said, "Ni hao, konnichiwa." Well, konnichiwa means in Japanese hello, ni hao means hello in Chinese. So, I thought that was strange, but since I know konnichiwa, so I answered konnichiwa. And they kind of laughed and said, "Oh, we know which one this is," saying they're trying to say, "Oh, is it Chinese or Japanese?" And since I answered konnichiwa, I must be Japanese. So that was very, irritating. But so such a situation is very rare, and I just wanted to mention them just to give you a sense now of a sense of the status of Asian in America. Now, Asian American and Pacific Islander. I don't know if you've heard the acronym AAPI. Recently, Pacific Islanders, mostly Filipino, they're included within this group. So needless to say, when we say Asian American, it includes a broad range of, ethnicities. So you have the East Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Southeast Asians, Vietnamese, Thais, and South Asians, which include Indian, Sri Lankan, etc., and Pacific Islander, mostly Filipino. Now, you should note that Asian Americans, the number of Asian Americans in America has been increasing quite rapidly. When I was growing up, we were very few in number, not even 1%. Today, 7% of US population, or 21.5 million out of something like 335 million total US population, are Asian Americans. So it is said that it is the fastest growing ethnic group in the US. Now, 25% of the Asian AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander, 24% are Chinese, 21% Indian, 19% Filipino, 10 Vietnamese, 9 Korean, 7% Japanese, and the rest, the 15, all others, include other ethnicities within this group. Now, what is interesting about Asian American population is that about 50% are foreign born, which means that many people have immigrated. They were not born in the US. And so there is a perception within the larger population that Asian Americans are foreigners. And that is one of the reasons which contribute to the anti-Asian sentiment. And in fact, for example, I have Japanese American friends who are, fourth generation or fifth generation. But because of the perception that Asian Americans tend to be looked as quote forever foreigner, and that is one of the perceptions that again contributes to the attitudes. Now, having said all this, on balance, U.S. or America offers opportunity to live up to the ideals of liberty, equality, and justice, and acknowledges ability regardless of race. For example, we had a president, a Black president in Barack Obama. That was, clearly an evidence of someone who is capable being named to the highest office in the land. And of course, we have a Kamala Harris, who is now the vice president, who is of half Indian background. And I love, one of my favorite journalists is Fareed Zakaria. I don't know how well he's known in India, but he is actually an immigrant from India and has become one of the top journalists, and he has a regular program on CNN. So also Asian Americans have done well educationally and economically. 54% of Asian Americans have college bachelor's degree, a degree from four-year college, compared to 32% of all Americans. See? So you can see more than half of Asian Americans have college degree, which is quite impressive. And in terms of household income, it's higher than white American. Especially Indian Americans have the highest household income amongst all the ethnic groups. And also, as an example of openness and ability for people to marry freely, to do well economically, educationally, especially Japanese Americans who have been in the US for a long time, they have become very, acculturated, part of the culture. And most Japanese Americans marry out or marry with other non-Japanese Americans. So my family is a good example. I have a younger brother who's married to a lady of European background. And my children, all three of them, have married Asian Americans who are not Japanese American. So that's an example of the openness and the upward mobility that is available, despite the rise in Asian hate crimes against Asian Americans. Now, however, with the with the pandemic, even before the pandemic, the election of Donald Trump as president in 2016, as you probably know, this racial relationship or ethnic relationship uh, worsened. And with the election of Donald Trump, because of his attitude towards, uh, uh, basically he is opposed to pluralism, diversity, and then it got worse with the arrival of the COVID. And so, as is well known, he used to refer to the COVID as China virus or Kung flu, play on Kung Fu, and to point to the fact that the virus came from China, and so, and also, as many of you already understand, that the rise of former President Trump and the impact that he still has in the US. There's talk of him running for president again in 2024. His support comes from a population that feel anxious and fear about a lot of things, economically and culturally, and especially by those the population who is white, who comprises of people who have not gone to college. They feel economically and culturally under siege. So also another factor is the fact that the rise of China as an economic and military power has caused, anxiety among many Americans. So all of these are the factors that have contributed to the most recent spike in attitudes, spike in crimes and against Asian American. Now, let me just move a little bit more to the topic of Buddhism. So I myself, as an Asian American and also as a Buddhist, how would I respond to this Asian American hate crimes? And one is to have a fundamental attitudes of how I think about the situation. And what comes to mind is that famous Dhammapada passage: hatred is not overcome by hatred. Only by abandoning hatred can hatred be overcome. This is an ancient and eternal law. And I think this is an attitude that should be at the foundation of who I am as an Asian American Buddhist. And then, so I should pledge to myself to make this a basic principle to the situation of heightened tension with greater cases of hate crimes. So basically, take this attitude of non-hatred as a principle to guide how I think about the situation, which is not a pleasant situation. Needless to say, you don't want to be feeling, that some people, fortunately, it's only some, it's not all, but some feel this to a greater extent than ever before because of COVID, because of rise of China, because of the fear that a certain population, certain segment of the population feels about China and its military and economic power. I just want to mention that this famous quote from Dhammapada, someone, I don't know if you know this, but I thought I would talk about this briefly because it's a case of how a Buddha's words changed history. And in 1951, 52, there were meetings to draft a peace treaty between the Allied forces and Japan, which had lost the war. It was held in San Francisco. And many countries gathered in San Francisco for the peace treaty. And there was a representative from Sri Lanka whose name was J.R. Jayewardene. And he represented Sri Lanka. Later, he becomes the president of Sri Lanka. But he, as a Buddhist, spoke out against asking for huge reparations, damages for what the Japanese military had caused in Asia. So he said, quoting from this passage, hatred ceases not by hatred, but by love. And in expressing this attitude, he said, well, let's not put too much pressure on Japan, because that would lead to maybe more hatred. And then things may lead to more fighting. Actually, this is what happened in Germany. World War I, Germany lost, and they were asked to pay huge reparation, damages, and that put a lot of pressure. And I understand that this kind of situation, resentment by the German people and the difficulties they had economically, led to the rise of Nazis and ultimately to Hitler. So here we have a Buddhist from Sri Lanka quoting this passage, which is known by all of us, all Buddhists, and this led to Japan not having to pay a lot of reparations, which enabled Japan to recover after the war and to become the industrial power that it has become, and to contribute to world peace. So here is an example of a Buddhist passage that changed history. So I'm not sure how many of you know this, but this is something for all of you to take note if you didn't know about this, and the power of religion when you have certain heroes, speaking out against hate, speaking out against hatred, and trying to get back at those whom people feel have done them wrong. The word that I was seeking for, revenge. Okay. Now, so as a Buddhist, what we need to do is awareness of the situation with wisdom. First of all, we have to see, as Asian American, with the rise in anti-Asian crime, we have to see and assess the situation as they are, not to avoid it, not to say, oh, it doesn't exist, but to see things as they truly are, as we often say in Buddhism. And this situation is something, as an Asian American and as a Buddhist, is not something that we personally like. Nobody likes to be the object of hate. But we have to see, as the Buddha says, it's one of the 8 kinds of dukkha. And that is meeting up with what we do not like. We have, suffering, 8 sufferings. Some of them are, birth, aging, death, and illness. And then we have separating from people that we love. But here is meeting up with people that we do not like, or situation that we don't like. So we have to see this situation, not to avoid it and face head on. And we have to see that this situation is not something that we caused or I caused. It's caused by those others whose actions are, tainted and colored by the 3 poisons of greed, anger, hatred, and ignorance. So the situation, the cause is out there, It's not something that I did. And so we should realize that I am not the cause of hate crimes. And more importantly, not to feel that I am at fault. I'm not at fault. It's not I'm not the cause, or that I am inferior. Um, feeling bad about yourself or that you're the cause, that leads to a greater sense of being a victim. There's a word called victim mentality, that everyone is out to get me, that I am at fault, I kind of deserve it. These are attitudes that we should not take, and we should not take, and to have confidence in yourself that I am not the source of the problem, and but at the same time see things clearly so that we understand that there is this problem, and it's caused by the greed, anger, hatred, and ignorance of some people. And so this confidence, I think, is what we are looking for. And in Buddhism, those who are awakened, those who are enlightened, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and Arahats, they have certain qualities. They have a certain confidence in themselves. And this is a well-known passage from Sutta Nipata. The wandering solitary sage, uncomplacent, unshaken by praise or blame, unstartled like a lion at sounds, ensnarled like the wind in a net, unsmeared like a lotus in water, leader of others, by others unled, the enlightened call him a sage. So I have underlined, unshaken by praise or blame. This is important. Enlightened people, the Buddhas, they are not shaken, they are not startled by blame or criticism. And just as important, they're not, kind of shaken, or they don't, even when people praise you, they're not, overjoyed to a point where they lose sight of themselves. And I kind of often mention this in terms of athletes, great athletes. Here in Japan, where I now live, we have Japanese baseball players who gone to US and done very well, like Ichiro, Matsui, and more recently, Shohei Ohtani. I don't know how much you're following baseball, major baseball in the US, but Ohtani has done so well as both a pitcher and a hitter. And then and everyone is talking very highly of him, and he probably will win the most valuable player in the American League. He's a huge Japanese baseball player. He's 6'4", great physique, but very humble. He's always enjoying baseball. But the greatest quality is that after the game, when he's interviewed, people ask him, how was it? And even when he does good, even when he does badly, he's even keeled. He's balanced, and he's not startled. He's not shaken. He's not, mentally pushed around. So here, lion that is unstartled by sounds, or wind that is not bothered but ensnared in a net, and a lotus that is not smeared by water. These are just metaphors about a quality of confidence and not being shaken. And so we need to keep that in mind. And Buddha, as we all know, at the end of his life, he made that famous speech about make yourself the lamp and make the Dharma or the Dhamma the lamp. So you become the lamp. You develop confidence. You develop awareness and based on wisdom. And then in Mahayana Buddhism, especially in Nirvana Sutra, it talks about how everyone has Buddha nature, which is found equally amongst all people, and even sentient beings, the equal ability to become Buddhas. So, so Dharma the teaching calls us to pledge not to hate and discriminate, realizing that this can contribute to my personal well-being and that of the society at large. Of course, on a personal level, we don't do it ourselves. We do not discriminate and hate others on a spiritual and personal level, and also on a society level. And here, another element that is important is that we also have to acknowledge that I too have some prejudices. That is important, not to always point the fingers at others. You know, we often say, when you point the finger like this, like that, you have one finger pointing to people, but you have three fingers that are pointing towards you. So when you say, you know, don't discriminate, don't feel prejudice, that we all have the potential to have prejudice and discriminate. So awareness about one's, you know, negative parts, or about our hatred, greed, and ignorance is also important for me to grow as a Buddhist and as a human being. So now I have been talking more on an individual level, a personal level, but we must speak up on a society level. We can't just keep it to ourselves and just work on ourselves. You know, so spiritual growth and awareness within is important, but we have to also get the message out, or speak out whenever there are issues, and especially with regard to hate crimes against Asians. Now, in America, it's often said that Asian Americans are a model minority, you know, model. In other words, you know, Asians, they work hard, they study hard, they, you know, they don't commit as many crimes. And so they are considered Asian, a model minority. But there is a negative side to that, in that because we consider ourselves models, that we don't speak out and, you know, rock the boat when there are injustices and discrimination. We haven't spoken out as much as before, as much as we should. So there's a kind of a sound. Okay. So again, you know, and partly because Asian, you know, just keep quiet, do your work, and, you know, don't be bothered with issues in the society, because, you know, we are doing well economically, and so we tend not to speak up when there are injustices. So specifically what that means is that Asian Americans, in a way, have considered them somewhat separate from the issues and problems of Blacks and Hispanics, the other major minority population. And so I feel that especially as Buddhists, whenever there are situations that go against the Buddhist teachings, we have to stand in solidarity with minority communities, especially African American community, which has suffered for over 400 years from institutional racism. Most Asian Americans, I mean, all Asian Americans went, you know, immigrated to America voluntarily. But if you look at the situation for African Americans, they were, you know, taken as slaves against their will, and their family often broken up, and which have contributed to many of the issues and problems that they have encountered. So we need to understand and empathize with them. In the 1950s, southern states in the US, they had separate drinking fountains for blacks and white. And this is just anecdotal, but I recall an Asian American who were happy, quote unquote happy, because they passed as whites. In other words, they didn't have to somehow go to the, black drinking fountains where the blacks were using, but they were able to use the white drinking fountains, and they were happy about that. Well, I think that kind of attitude should be rejected, because this very fact of inequality and discrimination is not something to feel happy about, and to feel happy that, well, you're part of the majority, because the fact that you are making that distinction of being part of the discriminative situation is not something for Buddhists to condone and to perpetuate. So we must again make changes on a societal level, and what that means is not only to speak out, but we have to pass laws or to make changes institutionally. And this year, in May of 2021, a major bill, a law was passed called COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, which President Biden signed into law in May of this year. And this law is to, lessen the hate crimes against Asian Americans, but also to, be severe, have severe punishment for those who perpetrate these crimes. And the bill was led in part by Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, who is seen here. And she led one of the lawmakers, a senator. As you know, in America, you have 100 senators, 2 from each state. And she is from Hawaii. And interesting part, she is a Buddhist. She is a Buddhist. And we actually have 2 Buddhists in the US Congress. It's very few, but we have Representative Hank Johnson, who is also a Buddhist from state of Georgia. And so we have other Asian Americans, of course, but they're not necessarily Buddhists. But here we have Mazie Hirono, who led the struggle, the fight to establish this new law. And she symbolizes this need that I'm talking about, which is not to only talk about on a personal level, but you have to change society, and change society in terms of laws. And so going back to the fundamental position of equality, non-discrimination as a Buddhist, not to give in to hatred, not to feel that you are to blame, to be blamed, or that you are inferior. So we need to keep this important, well-known passage. Not by birth is one an outcast, not by birth a Brahmin. By action, one is an outcast. By action is one a Brahmin. Essentially, it says that it's not your birth, it's your action, it's what you do. Worth of a person lies in your action and your deeds. And we know how the Buddha did not support the caste system. And example of allowing Upali to be member of the Sangha who went on to become one of the great 10 disciples and an expert on Vinaya and precepts. So I close with Dr. Ambedkar's citation. I like the religion that teaches liberty, equality, and fraternity. And so these are the values that we have to be mindful of and practice in our lives on a personal level, but also on a society level, and to be part of an effort to change society in keeping with the values and aspirations of what the Buddha taught and what Dr. Ambedkar was moved enough to become a Buddhist 65 years ago. Finally, so this concludes my talk, but I also want to, we'll make this available to Mangesh and to your group about a book that I have written, which is available free of charge by just downloading. It's called An Introduction to American Buddhism for Youth, Scouts, and the Young at Heart. Many of you are not young, but you're young at heart, which is important. And so please go, and I will make this available through Mangesh, and please download. He has much humor, Buddhist humor, which I give a whole talk on that half a year ago. And so, okay, so I will stop here.
Professor,
Yes.
I think that was a very insightful presentation, and it speaks to us here in India, because when you talk about the hate crimes or the stories which involves hate, as you know that in India the caste system is not is still very active in the public life and even the private lives of the people, and it creates enormous amount of hate and I would say violence in the Indian society, and this inbuilt discrimination in the Indian Hindu social order has caused a lot of damage to not only psychology but also the social lives of a lot of people. And your talk about how that is unfolding in America, not to this extent but to a greater extent with Asian Americans and particularly the Black Americans and so on and so forth. So we are really struggling with this particular problem all over the places and in India as well. And to remind ourselves that there is a way out, and the way you cited the former Prime Minister, President of Sri Lanka, J.R. Jayawardene, and with beautiful.
Do you know about him? Maybe
Yes,
you,
yes,
but
yes.
is he well known for what he did?
For this act, he's not well known. This is for the first time I heard.
Yeah, okay, that's good. But it's been it made a significant difference for the for Japan.
Yes,
because,
yes.
If he wasn't for that, it could have really slowed down the economic recovery and made it more difficult. Yeah.
So the fact that words matters, and the words of the Buddha do matter, and that is what Baba Ambedkar has taught us, that the words has to be carefully cultivated and has the very mindfully put in the world. So this particular story that you cited at that point in your presentation was really very, like I would say, turning in the direction of where we can find a possible solution, and that's what we are trying to do in India, find the possible solutions to these hate crimes through the Buddha's means and ways. And this particular gatha, so popular nowadays among the Buddhists, nahi vere na verani sammati cha kudachana, vere na cha sammati eso dhammo sanantana. So Professor, that was very ultimate message in this particular situation. I would say that these are the exact words that Baba Ambedkar told us in 1936. So in 1935, he declared that he will not die in the hell of a caste. And in Bombay, there was a big meeting addressed to 10,000 people in 1936, 20 years before the conversion. And he's addressing a crowd of 10,000 people. And he's saying that I am giving the message that the Buddha gave. And he says, I'm going to give the message from the Mahaparinibban Sutta.
Hmm.
And he says, he ends his speech with one word, Atta Deepa Bhava.
Oh,
Means be your own light, make yourself a light. So your presentation speaks so directly to the people in India, particularly the Ambedkarite Buddhists. So a question here will be for Buddhists and for Baba Sahib Ambedkar. It was very important for him to have this word mission of the Buddhists to really battle with these ideas of hate, of crime, of discrimination. So how do you see, Professor, that this word mission, I should not use the word mission because it has a different connotation, but kind of a world-wide solidarity that goes hand in hand with how we can relate with the problems in different countries, like in America, you have hate crimes, you have the racism, and increasingly in all over the places, if we examine, we find all these things. So what do you think as a Buddhist, and having worked in the multicultural societies and having worked with several organizations, how do you see that that's coming into being this kind of a
you
transnational solidarity?
mean uh, the word mission,
Yes.
or well, okay. So it seems to me what you're asking about is has to do with putting the values of Buddhism into action in society
Yeah,
and
with a solidarity. Yeah.
engage Buddhism. So there is an element of personal development, personal appreciation, but that alone is not enough, and we have um, to put these values out to impact what happens in the world, and to do that, we should cooperate with like-minded people, especially like-minded people who are Buddhists, to carry out these values. And so I think that even so in Japan, the Buddhism has been understood more in terms on a personal level, or in the context of ancestors and ancestor veneration, but more and more people feel that Buddhist teachings of wisdom and compassion need to be implemented in society. And especially after the big earthquake and tsunami in 2011, many religious people, including Buddhists, have taken their religious ideas into action, and they have made some great contribution to the recovery. And so I think that is something that more Buddhists are feeling throughout the world. And so that's why today I said not we have to speak out
Yes.
socially.
Yes.
Yes.
So, Professor, I think we are nearing to the end of our talk, but it's
Okay.
always lucky occasion. It's a fortunate occasion to listen to you, to be able to talk to you, and you have a very kind group of people around you. When you heard about the COVID pandemic and the problems it's caused, you immediately wanted to help with the act of generosity. Actually, I should not say that in public, but that's the kind of the efforts that you yourself and your students are doing, not just talking, but you are actually putting something in the word as an action. So extremely grateful for all your solidarity and love and friendship. But before we say goodbye for a day, do you have any passing remarks before we conclude our discussion today?
Well, I understand that the attitude of hate impacts your, the Ambedkar following, people who follow his teachings. But I know and you already know this, but you should please make Dr. Ambedkar's appreciation Buddhism as a source of strength and confidence, and to know that the problem is not you, its problem is them, and that you are not inferior, that based on Buddha nature and the Buddha's teachings, we are equal ultimately. And that confidence will help you to become stronger and not give in. And because once you feel like you are inferior, then you lose, you know, because that sense of inferiority is imposed on by people in power or people, the majority. But through the Dhamma, we fight back towards that, and to cultivate, you know, a spirituality that is where you become the light, you become the lamp, and that's how you combat hatred and other causes of suffering.
Yes. Before I close this discussion, I was just thinking about a great mystic poet who had a Buddhist disposition in our country. His name was Kabir. He's one of the gurus of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. And he said that when I wanted to weigh people, human beings on the scale, ultimately I found that they are made up of light. They are lamps within themselves. So how can light be measured? Where is the scale by which you can measure the light within the people? So there is no basis for discrimination, and that ties up with the Buddhism that you follow, the Buddha of limitless light and life. There is no scale to judge or weigh people on that scale. And I think Baba Saheb Ambedkar himself had that aspiration to bring that light back in our country, because the light has now gone, but we wanted to bring it back. So I thought that, I don't know whether it will be a proper request if we can end this session with a little chant of Nembutsu from you, Professor, if possible.
Oh, Nembutsu. Okay.
Is it okay?
All right.
Thank you so much, Professor, for this.
Welcome.
And we will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you.
See you again. And everyone, please take care.
Yes.
And have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
In America a lot. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.